In February 2022, the Russian invasion of Ukraine saw the deployment of armored columns protected by missile cages. The Russian tankers and commanders believed that the Javelin missile threat would be mitigated by the missile cages. However, they were in for a rude awakening as the Javelin missile proved to be incredibly effective at taking out Russian tanks, negating a key strategy for the ground forces of the Russian military. The Javelin missile, with a maximum effective range of 1.5 miles, is a passive weapon that tank crews cannot detect until it's fired. Even then, many Russian tanks cannot see the missile approaching, making it an ideal weapon for taking out armored vehicles. When compared to the BGM-71 tow missile, the Javelin missile has very little backblast, which is the explosive reaction that occurs after the missile is fired. The backblast from a tow missile is substantial and alerts enemy tanks of an incoming missile. Although the range of a tow missile is long enough for the crew to avoid being targeted, it's still best to go unnoticed. Another advantage the Javelin missile has over the tow missile is that it's a fire-and-forget weapon, meaning the crew can take cover and remain at a safe distance, whereas the crew of a wire-guided tow missile must remain in place until the missile strikes its target. The Ukrainian light infantry has a significant advantage on the battlefield against armored vehicles and tanks, as they can attack the top of the Russian armada tank, which is the least protected part. The Russian tanks were equipped with cage or slat armor, which was supposed to protect against hand-carried missile launchers used by light infantry like the US 82nd Airborne. However, when the combat effectiveness was tested, the results were evident in the volumes of photos of burnt-out Russian tanks. And also, Russia asserts that its T-90 tank is one of the finest armored vehicles globally, despite its misfortunes in Ukraine. Due to Russia's long-standing use of a massive number of tanks on the battlefield, it is constantly searching for ways to modernize and upgrade its tank fleet. The modernization of the T-90 has been a critical element of this effort since the Soviet Union's collapse, up to the present day, notwithstanding the vehicle's difficult performance in Ukraine. The T-90 is touted as one of Russia's most sophisticated tanks. It is equipped with an autoloader serviced 125mm to a 46mm main gun and has a firing range of 5 km in its basic form. Additionally, it is outfitted with KORD 12.7mm heavy and 7.62mm PDKM coaxial machine guns. Propelled by a 1000mm 12-cylinder engine, the T-90 has a crew of 3 and can attain speeds of 60 km per hour on roads and 50 km per hour off-road. The T-90 is capable of firing the advanced 9-plunk MAS 119 reflex anti-tank guided missile system, which is specifically designed to target tanks equipped with explosive reactive armor or helicopters. Regarding its own protection, the T-90 is shielded by a blend of Contact 5 explosive reactive armor on the hull and turret, as well as multi-layered steel armor. Despite its hype superiority and extolment in Russian media as the best tank worldwide, the Russian T-90s have experienced grave difficulties in Ukraine. In fact, Russia appears to have suffered its first T-90 loss shortly after the tanks began to appear in Ukraine in the spring. Although Russian media sources have emphasized the further delivery of T-90 megaseconds to their armed forces during the invasion as evidence of the resilience of Russia's arms industry, the detection of French optronic technology in a T-90 captured by Ukrainian forces raises doubts about the supply chains that support T-90 production. Despite the T-90 not meeting the majority of the hype in Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the protracted advent of the T-40 Armada to active service is likely to necessitate Russia's maintenance of its T-90 fleet in the foreseeable future. So, the Javelin missile is designed to explode over the top of the tank's armor, like the lightly armored top of the Russian Armada. The tank has 500 centimeters of plate on its sides and front but only 30 centimeters on the top. When the missile explodes atop the enemy tank, it first uses an explosive-shaped charge to penetrate the armor. Then, the main warhead of the missile detonates, much more powerful than the initial explosion. The warhead is a tandem charge and is timed to detonate when over the most vulnerable part of the enemy armor. Once the armor is pierced, a jet of superheated metal is fired into the enemy tank. The jet is powerful enough to penetrate thick armor, including the 30 centimeters on Russian tanks, and can also penetrate any cages that may be in its way. While slat armor may be useful against lesser weapons like drones or RPGs fired from rooftops in an urban environment, it's useless against the Javelin missile. The hundreds of burnt-out hulks across Ukraine are proof of the Javelin missile's devastating effectiveness against the Russian armored columns. Thank you for watching. If you found this content informative, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to Sensational Tech channel for more exciting content on technology, engineering, and science. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.